अल्पना शुरू करवाओ, 3:10 हो गया।
अल्पना मैम स्टार्ट करो।
Yeah, you can start. Yeah.
Very good afternoon, ma'am. Once again, Abhijit sir. Once again, ma'am. This is Navneesh. I am based at Delhi. Look after North Zone. Welcome to all of you for your thanks for giving your valuable time. Now I would like to invite Mr. Abhijit Mitra. His ma'am AGM Marketing is look after all India sales and marketing part. So Abhijit sir, please.
Yeah, thank you, Navneesh. Good afternoon, doctors. It's an honor for us to be part of your show as such, as in Ghaziabad Obs and Gynecology Society. Doctor, first of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and really look forward to the fantastic academic fiesta that we are expecting today. First of all, I'd like to bring in Dr. Anjana Sabharwal, the Secretary of 2021 Obs and Gynecology Society of Ghaziabad. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitra. So, good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to this onco session of today. I have a few very important, announcements to make before we go on to the session proper. So, first, with God's blessings and of course with your participation and cooperation, I would like to tell you that we have completed a quarter of our eventful COVID-affected tenure. And it is a real, respite for me. And I hope it is a respite for you people too.
Yeah,
anyway, now coming to the...
Big clapping.
Thank you. Now coming to the first announcement which I'm going to make, that is about collection of subscription money for the year 2021. For old members, this is going to be 1100, 600 for Foxy and 500 for Cox. For new members, we are going to charge 800 for Foxy and 1000 for Cox. Total comes out to be 1800. For associate members who are the members of GOGS only and not Foxy, they have to pay only 500 bucks. We are prepared to have the collection offline as well as online. Whichever mode you want to pay, you are most welcome for that. This year, with the prevailing, COVID situation of social distancing, I think we will not be able to have any family meet or annual CME. And accordingly, we are not asking you any, charges for that. We are not collecting money for that. Of course, if God allows and we intend to have such a thing in the later part of the year, we would be asking you for money at that particular time only. We are not collecting it right now. Third important thing I want to say is about the family meet collection. The family meet collection that our preceding team, Magical Queens, had collected, that was last year, that has been handed over to us. And this money we are going to adjust in the annual subscription that we are going to take from you people. And soon we would be uploading a list of members who have already paid for the family meet last year. And we'll also be telling them as to how much money they have to pay extra to complete the subscription for the year 2021. Or we have to return the money if somebody has paid a greater amount. We would request all members, please listen to this carefully. We would request all members to go through the site member.foxy.org to verify your details and try to complete this process by 25th of July. Because e-voting is going to start for Foxy elections from 1st of August onwards. So if you cannot find yourself in the database or you find that some discrepancy is there as far as your name or other things associated with you are concerned, we would like that either you tell us or you write to Foxy so that your registration as category A member is confirmed and you can use your voting right. Now coming to another important point, I would say that this year we are going to release a directory and we have Dr. Ritu Gupta and Dr. Shilpi Singhal who are part of the directory committee, and they would be calling you off and on to verify your details and other credentials. Kindly help them out and answer their queries. So, friends, without wasting any more time of yours, I would now hand over the proceedings for further proceedings to Dr. Neha Saxena. She will carry on from here. Thank you. Over to Dr. Neha.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, chairpersons. Good afternoon, speakers, all my seniors and colleagues. On behalf of Team 2021 of Ghaziabad Obs and Gynae Society, I welcome you all for today's session, July 2020, on adnexal masses and breast lump. To chair the sessions, I would like to invite our chairpersons. First, I would like to invite our super enthusiastic and always helping Dr. Madhu Singhal ma'am. She's a senior consultant Obs and Gynae, and she has been a past president of GOGS. We welcome you, ma'am. Thank you. Secondly, I would like to invite our pretty dynamic and magical queen, Dr. Seema Varshney ma'am. She's a senior consultant Obs and Gynae, and she has been the past president of GOGS for the year 2019 and 20.
Thank you.
We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
To speak on today's sessions, I would like to invite the speakers. First, I would like to invite the powerhouse of knowledge and talent, our own Dr. Swasti. Ma'am, she is a senior consultant, gynae oncology at Max Super Speciality Hospital, Patparganj and Vaishali. She would be speaking on the topic adnexal masses, dialamine and minuti.
Thank you, Dr. Neha.
Secondly, I would like to invite our young, dynamic and super talented Dr. Rashi Agrawal. She is a senior consultant oncologist at Max Hospital, Vaishali. Ma'am will be speaking on the topic breast lump current approach. We welcome you, Rashi ma'am. Now I would hand over the mic to Dr. Madhu Singhal ma'am for further proceedings.
Thank you, Neha. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
An adnexal mass is a growth that occurs in or near the uterus, ovaries, fallopian tubes, and the connective tissue. They are usually benign, but are sometimes cancerous. Most of them are filled with fluid, and some are solid. Adnexal masses include ovarian cysts, ectopic pregnancies, and benign or malignant tumors. They can occur at any age. Initial detection and evaluation of an adnexal mass requires a high index of suspicion and thorough history and physical exam. Timely, appropriate laboratory and radiographic studies are required. Goal of evaluation is to differentiate between benign and malignant tumors. Dr. Swasti will present on this topic in detail to you. And in the meantime, please keep on sending your questions in chat box. Now over to Dr. Swasti.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, dear Gogsons. It's our own very Gogs, and I'm really honored to be here amongst all of you. And thank you to Team Torrent, led by Mr. Abhijit Mitra. So I'm going to talk about the dilemmas and minutiae of adnexal masses. It's a very common problem that is faced in gynecological practice. Next, please. So half of the solution to any problem lies in defining it, as said by Dr. Phil. So let's define what our challenges are. So the questions, the key questions whenever we look at an adnexal mass is how to ascertain oncological safety. Is it cancer? Is it not cancer? If it's cancer, how do we deal with it keeping oncological safety in mind? And then where is it originating from? Just like Dr. Madhu said that, they can originate from either the ovary or the tube. So it's anywhere close to the uterus in the adnexal region. Is it really a gynecological mass or not? And what are the approaches whenever we encounter an adnexal mass? How should we investigate? How to manage? Should a surgery be done? If a surgery has to be done, what should be the route of surgery? If the patient is very young and desires further conception, how do we preserve her fertility if it's cancer? And what is the chance for a future pregnancy? So these are so many questions that are going on with one single adnexal mass and picture. Next, please. So the most important is what is the age group we are dealing with. Is it a peripubertal, adolescent, reproductive, peri or postmenopausal lady that we are dealing with? Next. The initial assessment has to be very crisp. So we take a thorough history about what are the onset of symptoms. Is the lady presenting with persistent abdominal pain, change in appetite, pelvic pain, urinary urgency, and is it a short history which is more in favor of an ovarian malignancy? Then what are the risk factors? That is there any family history of breast, colon, uterine or ovarian cancer which may point to a genetic mutation being carried over or a hereditary ovarian cancer syndrome? Of course, we look at what is the parity, history of breastfeeding, oral hormone intake, menopausal status, and do a thorough general abdominal and vaginal examination. Next. So if we look at all these things and a basic exam, that is an ultrasound, after we've done a thorough clinical exam and a history taking. So what are the ultrasound features to differentiate between a non-cancerous and a cancerous tumor or adnexal masses? Probably that you could look at irregular solid components in a malignant tumor with the presence of ascites, some papillary structures, or a multiloculated area which is solid in consistency at places. And the most important sign, which is the presence of neovascularization. That is, there will be a lot of peripheral blood flow in the lesion. And this neovascularization will be picked up just by putting a Doppler on it. So, in contrast to a malignant tumor, if you're looking at a benign tumor, it's usually unilocular and the solid component may be very less, or there will be no blood flow. So this is one single feature which distinguishes very characteristically between a benign and a malignant ovarian tumor. Next. So I just like to point out some of these important findings on an ultrasound. This is a 31-year-old lady with a mature cystic teratoma. So on a transvaginal ultrasound, this is seen as a complex ovarian cyst. There were some low-level internal echoes as seen by the larger arrow, and a solid appearing area seen by the shorter and the larger two arrows with a distal acoustic. So when you have a distal acoustic shadowing and these kind of things, then you can obviously it's a complex lesion, but it came out to be a mature cystic teratoma. Next, please. This is another sagittal TVF color Doppler in a 40-year-old with a complex cystic mass within the periphery of the ovary, and the solid area has a concave margin and no demonstrable flow. So, probably the solid area was a blood clot, and that is the single most important feature that I talked about. And the final histopathology was a hemorrhagic cyst with a clot. Next, please. When very often you find it in endometriotic lesions also, old clotted blood may be seen like this. So this is a 38-year-old on a TVS color Doppler. This is a complex ovarian cyst with a septum and a solid nodule. There's flow within the solid nodule, which is very, very typical of malignancy. 38-year-old, this is serous cyst adenocarcinoma of the ovary. Next, please. So when do we, go ahead and do something beyond an ultrasound? Which investigation should we do in a young woman where you've not been able to figure out is it cancer or not on an ultrasound? Is definitely the second line is an MRI. And this is important whenever your ultrasound findings are inconclusive, and wherever, in young women particularly, where you want to see whether you can save the patient's ovary or not. So in postmenopausal women, it may be, CT may be a good idea if you're thinking of malignancy. And when the patient presents with masses on ultrasound in various places in the abdomen and ascites, and you're thinking of malignancy, then of course, I think doing a PET CT may not be a bad idea in today's day and time to do a staging of the disease. So more complex lesions could be evaluated by the use of a combination or in isolation CT, MRI and PET CT. So routinely we don't do PET CT for all patients, but it depends on what are we looking at. Next, please. So let's look at this. This is an MRI image, and there is a 28-year-old lady, And of course, when we did an ultrasound, it showed a cystic lesion with some solid areas. So we went ahead and did an MRI, and this is a serous borderline tumor of the ovary. These two solid isolated areas enhanced with the contrast material, and small solid areas with slight enhancement could be seen even in borderline tumors. So this was a solid borderline tumor. Next, please. And MRI uses gadolinium as the contrast. So this is another MR picture where there's a large lesion, and it was difficult to make out any normal ovary on the ultrasound. It was just a very solid appearing lesion. And did an MRI in a 44-year-old lady, and there's no normal right ovarian tissue. This is the right adnexal mass, and microcystic components with a large solid area is there, and this came out to be a granulosa cell tumor. Next, please. So look at these, previous one, yeah. These are bilateral ovarian masses, and you can see there are solid and cystic components, and as depicted by the arrow, these are more than 5 centimeter masses. So on a pelvic CT, once you look at something like this, one has to be very careful. It may be a Krukenberg tumor. So Krukenberg's, the primary may be from GI, that is stomach, or from the breast. So one has to do the right kind of tumor markers to ascertain a GI primary, like serum CEA, and this came out to be a gastric cancer. And in these kind of situations, we like to do a PET CT for these patients to understand where else the disease could be. And this is a 42-year-old lady with a CS stomach and bilateral ovarian Krukenberg's. Next, please. So this is again stage 4 serous adenocarcinoma of the ovary. So now whenever we have a ovarian cancer patient and we do an imaging, our idea is to understand whether the patient can be surgically resectable or not. So can we do a cytoreductive surgery in this patient upfront? That means where is the disease located at? Is the disease resectable? So in this patient, she's 66, stage 4 serous adenocarcinoma of the ovary. There's a lot of disease in the root of the mesentery, so a lot of cicatrization, so cannot be resected. This patient goes in definitely for a chemotherapy first, and then we will reassess after 3 to 4 cycles. Next, please. So these patients have a poorer prognosis. So this is a 59-year-old incidentally picked up ovarian cancer. There's localized increased uptake on a PET CT. A PET is a positron emission tomography with a CT component, and the dye uses FDG, which is fluorodeoxyglucose. It localizes a pelvic hypermetabolic focus to the right ovary, and once it was taken out, it was a serous ovarian cancer. Next, please. So again, this is what I was talking about. Where is the disease? Can the disease be resected? So wherever you have very thick disease over the diaphragm, we don't resect it immediately. These patients go for neoadjuvant, or you have a liver metastasis, or you have a gastrosplenic omentum and a lesser omentum disease, a lot of disease on the surface of the intestines. The idea of ovarian cancer surgery, of course, is to remove all the disease wherever possible. It should not be visible to the naked eye. So all the disease has to be removed, and then these patients do extremely well. So one has to assess where the disease is, which areas are involved, and this is very, very critical for decision making. That is why most of the times I don't even look at what the report is. We always look at the films, and if you want to do it, it's always good to involve your radiology and nuclear medicine colleagues with you in assessment. So next, please. So first choice modality for a suspicious isolated ovarian mass is a transvaginal ultrasound, of course. And wherever this is unreliable, the second choice would be an MRI, particularly in young patients. Where you suspect extra ovarian disease, then CT is very useful. If you have a very high burden of disease on CT, then of course it's a good idea to do a PET CT in these patients. Next, please. So what is the role of tumor markers in the evaluation of ovarian mass? So very often I see there's an ovarian mass. Ye bhi kara le, wo bhi kara le. Kya karaye? Which single test? So there's no single test. I think it's important to understand what are you suspecting. So your decision making has to be on your assessment. So can a tumor marker predict a nature of ovarian mass, whether it's cancer, no cancer? No. So it's not a diagnostic test. Can it decide that which ovarian mass needs surgery? We don't know. Is there any role of tumor markers in follow-up? Yes. So if a tumor marker is raised prior to treatment, then it can be used in follow-up of patients with ovarian cancer. Next, please. The trouble with life is that there is no answer, and there are so many answers to a single question. That's by Ruth Benedict. Next, please. What kind of tumor marker should you do? So I would say a CA-125 in any woman with ovarian cancer, with an ovarian mass, is the first sort of test. But in a simple ovarian cyst, we're not seeing any abnormal things. It's a 3-4 centimeter cyst. Routinely, there is no need for doing a CA-125. If it's a persistent lesion, then of course, yes. In all younger women, the dictum that I follow is we do a germ cell tumor marker assessment also in women with complex ovarian masses. So we do an LDH, AFP, beta HCG. If the CA-125 is less than 200, then definitely further investigations, otherwise referral to an oncology unit. And in postmenopausal women, we calculate a risk of malignancy index by doing a CA-125 in this. Next, please. And as I said, that the CEA and should be done, carcinoembryonic antigen for bilateral ovarian masses, and the ratio of CA-125 and CEA is calculated to understand whether there's any other extra ovarian primary. So this is something called as a risk of malignancy algorithm, or the ROMA, that all of you must be using as well, which involves a CA-125 and HE4 testing, which has got its approval from the FDA in 2011. And where you calculate the, based on logistic regression algorithms, the risk of malignancy in pre and postmenopausal women. So usually when do I use these tests? I do this test when I want to differentiate between malignancy and endometriosis. That's my take on it. I don't do ROMA for all patients. There's no need, because it doesn't help you in any way in decision making. So the decision whether you need to operate this or not will be based on the imaging characters of the cyst. Next, please. Next, please. This is risk of malignancy index. So whenever we look for a postmenopausal woman and we look at the findings, ultrasound findings, we look at inoculation, solid areas, ascites, bilateral lesions, or any other deposit anywhere, and we give them points. Similarly, premenopausal and postmenopausal status has points, and CA-125 actual level, these are all multiplied. So any level, any CA-125 of 40 women with multiloculated cyst and postmenopausal, the RMI will be 120. And so a gynecology referral would be recommended. So this was used and given by the Britishers, and this is very widely used in the protocols in NHS. And I think the basic idea is to assess the imaging and look at the CA-125 levels. Next, please. But to tell you that all women with malignancy may not have a raised CA-125 and vice versa. So problems are not stop signs, they are just guidelines. So Robert H. Schiller said this, and that's very, very true and effective. So let's look at some guidelines, ACOG and SGO. They said that if you've got ascites and CA-125 more than 200 with abdominal or distal mets, or any first degree relative with breast or ovarian cancer, these patients need to be referred to a gynecologist. And also to tell you that now we have a recommendation worldwide to test all women with ovarian cancer for genetic evaluation. So they all must undergo genetic counseling, because their maintenance treatment and the treatment medication that you could use and the follow-up maintenance medication would be different for women with certain kinds of mutations. And also the risk assessment and familial assessment for all other members of the family is critical. Next, please. So again, a sum up of the ACOG guidelines. So if you look at premenopausal women, again, these three criteria are there, and of a CA-125 ascites and abdominal or distal mets, and similar for a postmenopausal woman. The elevation of CA125 may be a little different, which has a higher sensitivity in postmenopausal women as compared to premenopausal women. So you can see 93% in postmenopausal and 79% in premenopausal women. Next, please. This is the FIGO staging. Now, I always use this slide because it's very important to understand how the disease is prognosticated. So, if we are actually removing the tumor in piecemeal, we miss on capsular invasion. So, any suspected ovarian mass, once you've done your tumor markers, once you've done the imaging, you can understand yourself that what is the risk of this patient having malignancy. So in many patients, I would say this is 100% going to be malignant. Then don't rupture them, don't cut the capsule, because once the capsule invasion is missed, then obviously the prognosis gets affected because you will not be able to give the patient adequate treatment. So if you do a surgical spill or you rupture the capsule, you upgrade the disease from stage 1A to 1C, which will necessitate chemotherapy. Similarly, look at stage 3. Earlier, a peritoneal disease was thought to be of of a lower stage as 3A, and nodal involvement was put in 3C. But now it is reversed. This is based on prognosis, because now it is said that it has been seen that peritoneal disease patients fare worse. So their prognosis is poorer as compared to nodal involvement in ovarian cancer. Okay. So even if we have pleural effusion, it's a low volume infusion, we take these patients for surgery. Or if it's a larger effusion and stage 4, we do a new adjuvant treatment. We reduce the morbidity by giving them some chemotherapy and reducing disease burden, and then doing a surgery. See, ultimately what you are doing at surgery is important. How much disease you are able to reduce is critical for the patient's survival. It directly impacts survival. Next, please. Next. Yeah, so if you look at the differences between a pre and post-menopausal woman on how you need to decide whether you want to do a laparoscopy or a laparotomy. So there's no cutoff. So if you've got a benign disease and if you think that the chances of it being cancer are very, very low, extremely low, you're doing a paravariances, you put in a scope, you're seeing a paravariances, low chance of malignancy, go ahead and do it laparoscopically. And when you have large masses, large dermoids, solid components where you're not sure it may be dermoid, not dermoid, even in dermoids, you can have immature teratoma. So a laparotomy may be appropriate. So where you're having a larger lesion, no cutoff size for the lesion, but of course, where you need to cut and take out the specimen, it's always better not to do so. So 3 weeks back in this COVID time, I saw a patient, she was 29 years old, okay? And she had come with abdominal pain to a center outside, and she had hemoperitoneum and a large ovarian mass, which a part of it which was removed laparoscopically by morcellation using a cup morcellator. And she presented with severe abdominal pain. She was for chemotherapy because the final report came out to be a poorly differentiated Sertoli cell Leydig tumor. Now, Sertoli Leydig cell tumor in a 29-year-old is definitely a rare sort of a thing and a poorly differentiated tumor. So I got an imaging done because the patient was for chemo and they had referred me because in view of severe pain. So when we got an imaging done, the disease was everywhere. There was nowhere in the abdomen that there was no disease. So there were masses in the mesentery, there were masses which were going in the peritoneum. The bowel was totally involved. The masses were just below the diaphragm. Total peritoneum was involved. And there were masses in the pelvis, large, big masses. So the spilled disease, morcellated disease was all over the abdomen. And definitely at this time, there was no way but to, if she goes into obstruction, to do a diverting ileostomy because the colon was completely involved. There was no way one could have resected this disease. There was no way one could have done anything. So we told our medical oncology colleagues to actually go ahead with chemotherapy And the pain was actually because of the tearing of the peritoneum. So there was so much peritoneal involvement that the patient was in severe pain. So these are the hazards. It's not an overkill, but the only thing is one has to understand what and how things have to be removed. And whenever, even if you're removing a very non-suspicious mass, it has to be within an endo bag. Postmenopausal, I would say, don't attempt cystectomies. Always a salpingophorectomy is a good idea. Younger patients also, large masses, no ovary visible, no normal ovary seen, always better to do a salpingophorectomy of that side. May even for a large suspected immature teratoma, even if you've not done a staging at that time, at least that at next size removed, the patients will fare pretty well later on. So these are the kind of things which we just keep in mind whenever we are thinking of whether to do a endoscopic procedure or to do a open procedure. Next, please. So again, suspicious of malignancy, we do a full laparotomy and a staging procedure. We open, explore, take peritoneal washings. Next, please. We never aspirate ovarian cysts. Okay, aspiration in endometriosis can lead to abscesses. Aspirations otherwise will definitely have microspillage. So these are not to be done. And the recurrence rates will be extremely higher. Only in advanced malignancy, where malignancy is already proven, large, huge cystic masses, patient has for palliative treatment, then you can think about it in rarer circumstances, but not otherwise. Next, please. So this is just a depiction of what should not be done. This was a broad ligament cyst. Even such kind of lesions should not be aspirated. And this is, you can see this side ovary and tube actually absolutely normal. But even malignant lesions can happen in the broad ligament. Next, please. So is it important to avoid unplanned rupture of the cyst? Yes, it's very important because we should avoid spilling any kind, even, any lesions should be avoided to be spilled, because if they have malignancy, I will just tell you one more case. She was a 27-year-old girl, had sequential MRIs outside. She was treated medically for endometriosis, which was never histologically proven. And this girl, the MRI continuously wrote that she has solid component, which is old clotted blood. Now, in two MRIs, 4 months apart, the size, lesion size is same. It is 5 centimeter. Okay, but the solid component grew from 2 to 3.5 centimeter, which looked very irregular on the MRI. And looking at the films, it clearly looked malignant to me. When I took her for an open surgery, the size of the lesion was 6.5 centimeter. They said, "Ma'am, laparoscopically kar do." I said, "No, I'll not do this because the solid lesion looks very, very abnormal to me. It doesn't look like blood. And why should only clotted blood increase in 4 months, but not the size of the lesion? That also is not explainable." So both things put together, she came out to be a clear cell carcinoma at 27 with a background of endometriosis. So even if you say that endometriosis has lower incidence of malignancy, it's not as if you can't see malignancy in endometriosis. So one has to just play it by what you're seeing on the films. Next, please. So, of course, morcellation and risk of malignancy in presumed ovarian fibromas and fibrothecomas is also documented. No kind of morcellation should be attempted, whether it's fibroids or whether it's ovarian masses. Next, please. So when should you do an oophorectomy? Of course, with the young patient we discuss, and I do a lot of fertility preservation also. So, younger patients, it involves a lot of time whenever you decide patients to do an fertility preservation, and you're thinking that one side normal ovary is absolutely not there. So probably, and the possibility of malignancy, a borderline or a malignancy is high, and the other ovary is normal. Then understanding all the risks and taking into account all that you can do for the patient with the multidisciplinary approach of your IVF team. We do a cryopreservation of oocytes or embryos as the case may be, and then take these patients for surgical intervention. So in case we have to remove, if in case we can't do a fertility sparing surgery, then at least cryopreservation has already been done, and then with the help of a surrogate, patient can have a biological child. So, and this is a very successful way, and in most patients, I think the emotional aspect of, being able to have your own child is quite important. Next, please. So, what is the criteria for fertility preservation? Of course, patient should be desirous. The consent should be proper. Agree close to follow up, because this is not standard of care. This is a deviation from standard of care. So, any one-sided germ cell, sex cord, stromal, borderline, 1A invasive epithelial, one has to do staging complete. That means omentectomy, lymph nodes, peritoneal biopsies, washings, along with the unilateral salpingoperectomy. So in case there is no visible disease anywhere in the abdomen, only then we choose these patients to undergo this. Next. And frozen section. So frozen section is very important. Without the frozen section, sometimes you can land up in a soup. I today only saw a patient who was operated outside and had a hysterectomy 9 months before. At that time, there was a TO mass, and because of non-availability of frozen section, no referrals to oncology, the patient was operated with a simple THPS. So there was no histopathology report, and then the patient subsequently developed after 4 months of surgery. That means about January or February, she started having an abdominal lump. It was investigated half-heartedly, and now the patient has got omental masses, peritoneal masses, mesenteric disease, pelvic mass, vaginal bleeding, and a incisional hernia. And in the incisional hernia and loops of bowel, there is again disease. So there is a 7 centimeter skin nodule, subcutaneous tissue nodule. I've sent her for biopsy today. Biopsy has been done. And CT was only of lower abdomen, so I've asked for a PET CT today. So frozen section is something which is important. Wherever you have TO masses, adnexal masses, suspicious, CA125 was raised before surgery, it was 98. And now CA125 is more than 600. So now this patient has got a very poor prognosis because she's got disease in her skin reaching up to the subcutaneous tissue, and very at the incisional hernia site. So it is almost forming something like a Sister Joseph Mary nodule. Anyway, so frozen section technique, we take about 30 to 40 minutes during surgery, and in this technique our pathologist will cut the specimen, look for suspicious areas, and then take sections. But whenever there is a small abnormal area, we don't do a frozen section at that time, because we can lose that tissue to final analysis. Because once you've made a section of that area, you cannot assess it on paraffin sectioning. So this is a very good way to understand in doubtful cases, once the biopsy is also doubtful. And particularly in ovarian masses, it is useful where you cannot do a biopsy, can't do an FNSC. Next, please. So this is one of my patients, very large this thing, and this was a stage, very small solid area. This was a borderline serous cyst adenocarcinoma and borderline serous ovarian tumor. Next, please. Next. And this lady came with breathlessness to the emergency. She was 70 years old. There was a mass from pubic symphysis to xiphisternum. You can see the cut end of the pubis there. And there was no other way by which she could have breathed, because there was no space, that it was pushing the diaphragm. So we investigated, and this was a large 36 centimeters ovarian mass. It came out to be a mucinous adenocarcinoma, but it was only confined to one ovary, so it was a stage 1A, and you can see that I have taken the mass out intact. So no small incision, give an adequate incision, take the mass out toto. So sometimes people get greedy and say, okay, let's give a small incision, we will morcellate this, we will puncture it, we will aspirate it. No, incision will be closed, patient will heal, but what damage we will do by making a small incision will be for life. if there is any life. Next, please. So sensitivity of an ovarian section, I will tell people that it's a sensitive test, but in borderline tumors, it may have a little lower sensitivity. As far as malignancy, we are quite confident if there is abnormality, pathologist will definitely pick up. And it's a very, very 100% specific test in malignancy and borderline tumor, as well as benign pathology. Next, please. These are again, this is the uterus which I've held by two artery forceps to demonstrate two adnexal masses kissing each other. You can see the tube on one side on the top of the ovarian mass. These are bilateral masses which I had evaluated by an endoscopy, PET, CEA and CA125. These are primary bilateral ovarian cancers. So this is stage 1B. Next, please. There was no disease elsewhere. And this was serous. So we do a comprehensive surgical staging. Like I said, do a staging laparotomy, adequate midline vertical incision, peritoneal washings, intact tumor removal. And this diagram is, this photo is of a 16-year-old girl who had come with severe abdominal pain. This was torsion of the left-sided ovarian mass, and this was a mucinous borderline ovarian tumor. She is doing well. It's more than 3 years after surgery now. So you can see the torsion of the IP and the vessels and all the bluish thing that has happened to the mass. It's very important to remove these tumors intact. Next, please. And this is a very advanced ovarian cancer. So we do an optimal cytoreduction, whether you have to do a peritoneal removal or a bowel resection. We try and remove as much as you can. No disease should be left visible to the naked eye. Okay. So whatever much you can remove, your patient's life is going to depend on that. And this, you can see a omental caking here. And you can see the transverse colon just below the omental cake. Next, please. And this is another patient who's got ovarian malignancy. You can see liver at the top. So you expose completely and you can see the bowel and the omentum over the bowel. Next, please. And you can see these small whitish plaques on the bowel surface. These are bowel serosal deposits. So you cannot remove them. These patients do fairly poorer because this bowel serosa cannot be removed completely. You cannot remove the total bowel. So if there's disease on the bowel surface, it definitely has poor prognosis. Next, please. The wise man doesn't give the right answers. He just poses the right questions. And I'm sure you will pose a lot of questions for me today. Next. Thank you so much for patient hearing. And should I start answering the questions now or at the end of the session?
No. Dr. Swasti, there are a few questions and you have to answer them just now.
Okay, ma'am. So I think there is a question, what should be the line of management in tubercular TO masses? So the line of management is definite. There is no surgical intervention needed. One has to document. Tuberculosis is now a notifiable disease. We have to understand how we have to prove tuberculosis, what is important. So a biopsy is the definitive test. Now, mostly what happens in tubercular, whenever you have a doughy soft abdomen and you have TO masses and you have a young patient, I do a CT or a PET CT. What's the advantage is that it can avoid laparoscopy. Now, I had another 25-year-old lady where I did all this. She had bilateral TO masses and there was a perisplenic 2.5 centimeter deposit. So we did a CT guided biopsy from the deposit. It came out to be granulomatous. Okay. So once we proved it's a granulomatous disease, we went ahead and gave it anti-tubercular treatment for 9 months under the supervision of a physician. We are not to prescribe it ourselves. So the role, now suppose I hadn't seen this deposit. Okay. So what can be done? We can do a laparoscopy, and if it's peritoneal involvement is likely to be there in abdominal tuberculosis, or if it's not there, then we can biopsy from the ovarian masses, send a frozen section. If it's benign, wait for the final report. If it is proven tubercular, then definitely yes. Now, second question is, what is the role of laparoscopy in ovarian masses? I think some of it have I answered. And of course, one role of laparoscopy is to diagnose tuberculosis, which may mimic cancer. Second role of laparoscopy in ovarian masses is whenever you are doing younger patients and you're suspecting benign or you're suspecting torsion in smaller lesions. Third role is that whenever you want to do staging. Now, suppose you are not able to take biopsy in from ultrasound or CT guidance and you're suspecting cancer and there's not much ascites. Then in these patients, we can do a diagnostic laparoscopy and take adequate peritoneal biopsies to prove cancer. Okay, Dr. Nupur, I'll reply to you.
Dr. Sastry.
Yes, ma'am.
How to differentiate between dermoid cyst and teratomas?
Ma'am, teratomas and dermoid cyst is the same thing. The only thing is whether they have a mature component or an immature component. Sometimes if they have a large solid area, immature component can be picked up on a frozen section.
Okay.
Otherwise, the final biopsy may be conclusive. We have to do the tumor markers for germ cell tumor markers, and we have to take this patient for surgery and do a frozen section. If the frozen section is not able to pick up, then the final diagnosis will come up on the final biopsy.
Okay. And suppose when we on clinical examination, when we find a tubo-ovarian mass, then on first sight, how to differentiate between an inflammatory mass and a tumor?
So, ma'am, inflammatory masses will have more of, it will have no neovascularization on Doppler. Clinically, how the patient presents, is the patient having complaints of increased vaginal discharge, abdominal pain, is it like a PID presentation or not? So these are the kind of things which will prove towards an inflammatory. In certain cases of PID and inflammatory TO masses, even CA125 can be borderline elevated.
Yes.
So I think the clinical picture is very important. Plus, on a CT or an MRI, you will be able to differentiate between a benign inflammatory versus a malignant. If there are no abnormal solid features, okay, if there's just a multi-loculated thick-walled lesion with a dilated tube, then it is more likely to be a tubo-inflammatory lesion.
Okay. And up to what size of the mass we can wait for the medical treatment to go ahead?
So, ma'am, if the abnormal features on imaging are not there, if it's a simple unilocular cyst, there is no reason to operate below 6 to 7 centimeters.
Okay.
Now, if there is any abnormal finding like a solid area, then the size criteria is not applied. Okay, so if it's a 5 centimeter lesion, but you are seeing multiloculation, you are seeing solid area, seeing papillation, then no need to wait for it to grow. Whatever size, we have to go ahead with surgical management.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sastry.
Thank you, ma'am. I think there is one more question from Dr. Anjana. In postmenopausal lady, chance of finding a cyst in the right ovary, size 3.8 centimeters, persisting for 8 months, CA125 7. So if it's a postmenopausal lady and CA125 is 7 and size is 3.8 centimeters, please do an MRI. If the MRI also shows that there is no abnormal finding, actually no need to wait, but you're saying that the patient is very apprehensive, then you must counsel her that the chances of malignancy are very low, but we can keep you on a 3-monthly follow-up. But if she's not willing, then the only solution will be to go ahead, take it out and do a frozen section, but likely it will not be malignant.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Alpna has asked, all your patients are young. The curve has shifted to younger age for ovarian cancer. Well, I think we are seeing a lot of young women with not even ovarian. I think Dr. Rashi will agree that even breast cancers, we are seeing a lot of things in
Yes, I do agree, Dr. Swasti. Now we are seeing our cancer patient at an early age.
Now further proceedings will be done by Neha.
Ma'am, shift to Dr. Seema Varshney. Dr. Seema Varshney will take over for the next session. I think Dr. Swasti is having problem with her net. Dr. Seema Varshney, please take over.
Yeah, hello. Am I audible and am I visible?
Yeah,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
are audible and visible both. Yeah.
Okay.
Carry
Good
on.
afternoon, everyone. So our next topic will be breast lump current approach. As we know, there is a rapid rise in breast associated diseases and the breast cancer. And we gynecologists often see confusion and problem when a patient comes with a breast lump, how to diagnose and how to assess. So today we have a very eminent speaker, Dr. Rashi Agrawal, who is going through light on these problems, and it will be easy for us gynecologists to diagnose whether the breast lump is benign, inflammatory, or malignant. So over to Dr. Rashi Agrawal.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seema. Thank you so much for your kind introduction. Mitali, are you making me a host, co-host?
Yeah, you can share your screen, doctor. You can share your screen. Navnishi, you can take off. Dr. Rashi, she can share her screen.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Rashi, you can share your screen now.
Okay, but I am not host.
No, you can share your screen, doctor. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Arutna, Dr. Anjana, and all senior GOX members and Dr. Swasti for giving me this opportunity to talk in this forum. So my today's topic is how to approach towards a breast cancer lump. Is my screen is visible to you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm starting. So how should we approach towards any breast lump? So as Dr. Swasti has advised us to be systematic, and as we all know, in our clinic we see our patients systematically. The same applies for breast lump also. We should start from history and clinical examination, then go towards radiological or pathological examination. So it must be a systematic approach. And why this is very important? Because so many articles have been published and they have reported in USA also that a misdiagnosis of breast cancer is one of the most frequent causes of malpractice claims in United States. So we must have to see, we all have to see our patients very meticulously. So to start with the history, for history, as we all know, we should start when and how the lump was noticed. And is there, what is the time, what are the changes that has happened into the lump? Is there any nipple discharge or nipple retraction? The lump is associated with any pain or it is related to menstrual cycle. And then we have to take menstrual history, family history, medication history, and history of previous breast disease also. Sometimes we have to ask particular questions because patient may not tell you all the findings that they have, because some patients have their history of family history of having breast cancer, but maybe they do not tell you, and these are very important. And if there is any history of breast biopsy, that is also very important. You have to ask patients about these histories, and also you have to ask about medications, because of some medications patient may have some discharge, nipple discharge, and when you ask, then patient tell you, yes, this was a history, this is a medication history, because of that I am having such problem. And then we come over physical examination. I know we all know all these things, but we have to go all through all this. When we examine, we have to examine patients completely. Both breasts should be examined. Sometimes patients come and say, no, I have having problem only in right breast, so examine my right breast only. But we have to compare both breasts, so examining should be done. We have to examine whole breast, And don't forget to examine inframammary fold, and also to examine axilla and supraclavicular region. And the patient should be examined in arm when the arms are relaxed at the sides, and also in the position when the arms are raised above the hand, and also when the hands are on the hips. Because sometimes lump is visible in one position and not visible in another position when it is small. And we should examine the patient with the 3 fingers. We should not try to catch the lump, but we should try to palpate it. And the same applies for self-breast examination also. During self-breast examination also, we have to use our 3 fingers, and this should also be done. This should be done at the time of that can be done at the time of when you are taking bath, or it can be done when you are lying down. And during examination, each and every part of the breast should be palpated very thoroughly. It is very important. And in this slide, you can see we have to examine symmetry of the breast. During breast self-examination also, Dr. Alpana has mentioned me to talk about breast self-examination also. When you are examining whole breast, we have to see symmetry. And why this is important? Because there was one of my colleagues, she is very young, and how she noticed the lump was because of breast self-examination. She noticed that the breast is not symmetrical. There is some changes. One breast is slightly enlarged, and because of this, she went for mammography, and her lump was diagnosed. So it is very important to see for symmetry, and also to see if there is any lump. And don't forget to examine your inframammary fold. Sometimes you may see skin thickening. It is not always necessary you see lump, but sometimes it is you may see some skin thickening that was not visible earlier. That is also important to see any changes that is occurring that was not earlier. So history and clinical examination, it plays an important role. After that comes radiological examination. In radiological examination, ultrasound of the breast is very important because it is easily available. And what happens in this, it utilizes echoes from high frequency sound waves which are translated into image. And this ultrasound breast is very important for young women who are less than 40 years, because they are having breast tissue which are dense. And because of density, mammography is not a good test. And with ultrasound, accuracy can be increased up to 10.4%. And ultrasound is a very good modality when we want to differentiate cysts from solids. And the other uses of ultrasound that we do is when we want to do ultrasound guided biopsy or FNAC. Next investigation is mammography. Mammography means X-rays. Mammography doesn't mean ultrasound of the breast. Sometimes I have seen when I write mammography, the labs where the mammography is not available, they do ultrasound and write is ultrasound mammography, USG mammography. It is not correct. Mammography means X-rays of breast. And as you all know, craniocaudal and mediolateral oblique view, these are the 2 views that are taken, and we want to see in these 2 views about calcification masses of the cyst. And you know, this mammography, this is the only method that has been proven that it can decrease breast cancer related mortality. And many times patient comes and asks the doctor, if we do mammography every 2 or 3 yearly, don't you think it will cause radiation damage to our body? So the important point is the effective dose that a patient get by a routine screening mammogram is only 0.7 millisievert, and that is equivalent to the dose that is received by natural radiation over 3 months. So you know, if we can diagnose malignancy at an early stage, at in situ stage 0 stage, that is very important, and the radiation that you get is very less. Mammography is used for screening purpose, or it is used for diagnostic purpose. And for screening purpose, the screening usually starts at the age of 40 in normal patients. And I have seen the patients who are coming with the pictures of only right mammography or left mammography or right ultrasound test, left ultrasound test. We should advise always bilateral mammography, bilateral ultrasound. Why? Because there are bilateral synchronous cancers. They are not rare. They occur. They are reported in 3% cases, and 65% of them are diagnosed only with these investigations. So it is important to do bilateral investigations. And in the slide, it is you can see a speculated mass is visible, and the margins are very indistinct. And when and there are some microcalcifications also. So these features denote, yes, this is a malignant lesion. And for mammography, craniocaudal view and mediolateral oblique view, there are two more views that we do if we want to diagnose more. This is a spot compression view, and another is magnification view. The sensitivity of this mammography is around 90% and specificity is 88%. And you know, the false negative rate is between 8 to 9%. That is quite high. That means if the patient is having some disease, you are feeling, yes, by clinical examination there is some problem, and mammography shows, yes, it is normal. But this 100% cannot exclude the possibility of cancer. So we have to see our clinical findings. And this BRADS category is very important. BRADS means breast imaging. This is BRADS category is done when the radiologist report ultrasound or mammography. And if this reporting is not done, it means the radiologist has not done the complete reporting. You should ask the radiologist to do complete reporting. Sometimes they write BRADS 0. BRADS 0 doesn't mean it is nothing. It means the reporting is not proper. That means it should be complementary with ultrasound or any other investigation. And so we have to be very cautious about BRADS 0. And sometimes they report BRADS 3. And BRADS 3 means probably benign. But there may be chances of cancer, but they are less than 2%. And for BRADS 4, it is very important to get some tissue biopsy. So I'm coming over now. Next investigation is MR mammography. In MR mammography, dedicated breast coil is used, and IV contrast is very important. So any MRI machine that is available anywhere that cannot do MRI breast. For breast MRI, that coil is very important. Without coil, we cannot do MRI of the breast. So the sensitivity of this MR mammography is 98%. So it is very useful in certain clinical situations. But what happens? Its specificity is very low. It's around 40 to 60%. And because of that, there are so many false positive cases that we have to do so many biopsies, because if MRI is reporting a suspicious case, you cannot leave it without biopsy. So we should use MRI very judiciously. It is an expensive test, and sometimes you and your patient may have some problems, but patient you cannot do. What should we do? So MRI should be used. We also use very judiciously. So according to these all things, I must say all imaging modalities have appreciable false negative rate. They have a false negative rate. So we have to combine clinical and radiological examination. Now I am coming over pathological examination. In FNAC, what happens? A simple needle is used, and by which some cells are taken and they are examined under microscope. This is a simple test, and that can be done on OPD basis. And the beauty of this test is this: sometimes pathologists can see this directly at that time, the same time, and if it is negative, and if they have talked to clinician and there is high suspicion of malignancy, they can repeat the FNAC at the same time. But this FNAC is very operator dependent test, and pathologists should be very specially trained. And the important thing for this FNAC that we should understand that false negative rate is 9.6% and it is appreciably high. So if it is negative, that doesn't exclude disease. Yes, it is not cancer. And FNAC is also, by FNAC, what we do, we only get some cells. Because we are getting only some cells, we cannot differentiate between invasive and non-invasive carcinoma, and also difficult to diagnose globular carcinoma. And what happens because of only we are having some cells, not much tissue material. Tests such as ER/PR receptors, this is very important for breast treatment. We cannot do these molecular tests on this FNAC. And during pregnancy, because of so many changes in the body, because of cells are so much changed, we cannot diagnose malignancy. Sometimes it is not possible to diagnose cancer in FNAC. So next thing after FNAC is biopsy. Biopsy is done by a core biopsy needle. And by this we get the tissue that is larger in size. And because of this larger tissue, the sensitivity is more and also its specificity is more in comparison to FNAC. And when we do this biopsy image guidance, then its sensitivity and sensitivity increases tremendously. It can be about 100%. And by biopsy, we get 4 to 5 cores. So you can understand by biopsy, we get a lot of tissue. So chances of missing the disease is very less. But everyone cannot take biopsy, and it also needs a local anesthesia. And for results, we have to wait. Like FNAC, the results cannot be delivered at the same time. So if we have a suspicion of malignancy, so we should use biopsy. And if we think, yes, it is more likely chances of a benign disease, at that time we can use FNAC. By biopsy,
Dr. Rashi, you are not audible.
It's some network issue, I guess, with her.
Okay. Should I call her?
Yeah, doctor, I guess you need to call her.
जाके निकालना पड़ेगा है ना एग्जिट में। लीकेज बंद कर दी मैंने। कहाँ पे? जेड चल रहा था, उसमें भी लीकेज होगी, ऊपर से भी सिस्टम से मैंने उसका बात होता है वो बात के आएंगे।
मिताली स्क्रीन शेयर कर दो प्लीज, मिताली स्क्रीन शेयर कर दो। अभी तक विजिबल।
Navneesh, can you please share the screen?
अच्छा, हल्का क्यों चल रहा है? उसका वो कुछ सही चल रहा है
डॉक्टर राशि ठीक है ना?
हाँ ठीक है।
मैम आप बताना कौन सा?
So we have completed. Next.
नल वो बंद करके नया नल लगाया है।
Next मिताली, next. So for systematic assessment of breast, triple assessment is very important. We have to examine clinically, we have to do imaging, and all, if needed, we have to do pathological examination. All 3 investigations are required, and by this we can get 95% correct diagnosis. Next slide. And by triple assessment. Mitali, please mute everyone.
Okay.
And by triple assessment, most large series report false negative rate is only 0.1%. Next slide. Nine 90% of palpable breast masses in 20 to 50 years are benign. So we don't need to worry about breast cancer, but we should always exclude the diagnosis of breast cancer. Next slide. So I'm coming over the differential diagnosis of breast lump. If you are having a patient of 15 to 25 years of the age, the most common lesion is fibroadenoma or fibrocystic disease of the breast. In fibroadenoma, the lump is firm. We call it usually breast mouse. It is firm, mobile, and the borders are very distinct. And what happens in fibrocystic disease? The lump is not clearly visible. When the patients say yes, the pain is present over the whole breast and there is nodularity over the whole breast, then there are more chances of the patients having fibrocystic disease. And this disease is most commonly associated in premenopausal ladies. Another DD is cyst. Cysts are more commonly found in premenopausal ladies. And as the age increases, the chances of cancer increases. As per literature, if we see the lady of 30 years, the chances of breast cancer is 1 in 200. And if we see a lady of 50 years of having a lump, the chances of breast cancer is 1 in 30. So as the age increases, the chances of breast cancer also increases. But we cannot exclude, yes, at the 30 years, there is no possibility of breast cancer. It is not so. There are chances of having breast cancer at any age. Next slide. So I'm coming over fibrocystic disease. Certainly, I have, as I have already discussed, it is more common in premenopausal ladies. And the next slide, the pain can be cyclical. It can be related to menses. It cannot be related to menses. It can be constant, bilateral. Next slide. Mitali, next slide.
Navneesh, next slide.
And the treatment of mastalgia is reassurance. Because what I have seen, and I think you must have seen in your clinic, reassurance is very important. The lady always complains because she is having sometimes in their mind, yes, there may be some possibility of cancer. When you assure her about some big disease, some cancerous disease, she may be assured. And the size of bra is very important. And the literature have mentioned either hot compression or cold compression. Both can play their role. And you can give some analgesic also. The role of oral contraceptive pills and hormone replacement therapy is not clear. Sometimes the patients who are taking the OCPs may relieve if you stop them, and the patients who are not taking OCPs, they can relieve if you do vice versa. And it is always advised to stop coffee intake if they are taking. And some patients have been tried on evening Primoza or oil also. Next slide. But there is no clear-cut guideline. And the literature, the drugs which has been clearly used are tamoxifen and danazol. But the side effect of tamoxifen that we have to keep in mind, because of tamoxifen, there are chances of strokes and uterine cancer also. And so when we prescribe the medicine, then we have to explain the patient for this side effect also. Next slide. The danazol that is the only medication that is approved by US FDA. But because of being endogen, there are side effects also. Patient can have weight gain, menstrual irregularity. The side effects that are related to endogen hormone, they are there. So you should explain these side effects also to the patient whom you are prescribing the danazol or tamoxifen. Next slide. Next, I am coming over fibroadenoma. This is the most common benign tumor for which the ladies are operated, and this is typically present in young women. As I have already told, when you examine the patient have clear-cut picture of breast mouse. The lump is having distinct margins, and next slide, they can be solitary, multiple, and you know, because of fibroadenoma, there is no increase in chances of breast cancer. So sometimes patients say, doctor, may I have a breast cancer because of this fibroadenoma? I want to remove because this may convert into cancer. This is not true. Fibroadenoma cannot convert into cancer. And this is the picture of the same lady, and you can appreciate in the mammography, there is no microcalcification. It is enlarged view, and the margins are distinct, and there is no speculated margin. Next slide. And in this slide, you can appreciate multiple fibroadenoma. And you see the multiple fibroadenoma, the margins with distinct margins, no speculated margin. They are clearly defined. Next slide. So to management is careful. We have to be reassurance. Reassurance is the, I think, only treatment when the fibroadenomas are small. Because sometimes what happens, they happens in the young age, and with time they disappear. And when do ultrasound, and the ultrasound can clearly explain, yes, it is a fibroadenoma, and we do FNAC or biopsy when there is anxiety in the mind of patient. And if the patient age is more than 40 years, or then we do FNAC or biopsy, or we are having some suspicion, then also we do it. And the excision is usually indicated when it is causing any problem. Because of fibroadenoma, what happens? If the lesion is large, it may cause some pain. I remember a girl of 22 years was having fibroadenoma, and because of large size, 5 centimeter, it was causing severe pain. It was such a severe pain that she was not able to sleep in the night. And because of these patient being symptomatic and large size, then this was the indication of removal of that fibroadenoma. Next slide. And another finding is breast cyst that we commonly encounter in your scenario. And usually the cyst happens in premenopausal ladies. And if these cysts are simple cysts, then they can be aspirated very easily. And after aspiration, if a cyst completely disappears, that means it was a simple cyst, then we don't need to worry. But if the aspiration is bloody, and after aspiration there is some mass is remaining, there is non-resolution of the mass, that means we need to do excision of this cyst. And what happens in it is our tendency, what we do, if the fluid is aspirated, we send it for a pathological examination. But if the fluid is clear, usually it happens that in fluid there are rare chances of that fluid being malignant. So if the breast, if the aspirate is bloody, and if you send this fluid for investigation, there are rare chances of getting malignant cell in this fluid. So what you have to do? You have to advise excision biopsy of that cyst, and in biopsy, if there is anything, then we can get that. And we should also follow the cyst at the monthly interval. Next slide. Next DD is Phyllodes tumor, and Phyllodes tumor, it is like a fibroadenoma in appearance, but the common findings is this, that the lump is increasing in size very rapidly. So we keep the DD of Phyllodes tumor. And when you do ultrasound, there are typical features of lobulations, and there is absence of microcalcification. In every Phyllodes tumor, excision is the recommended treatment. We should do excision in Phyllodes tumors, either it be benign, borderline malignant, or malignant. We should do excision. Next slide. And this is the picture of a lady having a right-sided Phyllodes tumor. You can see the huge breast. And in mammography, the features of the whole lump, the breast was occupied by the lump. Next slide. Next DD is breast abscess. It is easily, we can easily diagnose the breast abscess because the patient having the local feature and systematic feature also. And when you do ultrasound, you can see the fluid collection, and we have to use at that time antibiotics and abscess drainage judiciously to treat these type of patients. Next slide. So this is an algorithm that is given by American family physician. If the lady is having a dominant breast mass, how should we proceed? And that I have told you. You can go through if you get these slides later. Next slide. So the next DD is breast cancer. So I have talked about fibrocystic disease, fibroadenoma, Phyllodes tumor, breast cyst, breast abscess. Next, the 6th number is breast cancer, because most commonly 20 to 50 years of the age, most commonly we get benign diseases. yes, breast cancer may happen. And why I'm worried about breast cancer? Because this is the most common cancer in the world for ladies. And it is the most common cancer in India also. We are not behind the world. We are not behind USA for this cancer. And it is the most common cancer of death also in India. And you know, the risk is so much high in 24 to 32 ladies. One is having risk of developing this cancer. Also in USA, out of 8 ladies, only 1 lady is having the risk of this disease. But in India, 1 in 24 in urban area, and next slide, in 32 in rural area is having risk of having this disease. Next slide. Now I'm going to discuss about different presentations of breast cancer. And in this lady, you can see that in left breast, a clear-cut lump that is visible. And when the mammography was done, a speculated mass with microcalcification was visible. Next slide. Next slide. This lady presented with me. She was saying there is discoloration of the skin and some irregularity over the skin. And you can see there is no the changes in both breast. The right breast, the right size of the right nipple, it is higher up, and you can well appreciate the change in contour. This is important. If this lady had undergone self-breast examination, she could appreciate this disease at an early age. Now she is having stage 4 disease. Next. Earlier I have asked you to check inframammary fold. Why? Because the lady was having the lesion over inframammary fold. As you know, the tissue over inframammary fold is very less. So the involvement of underlying tissue is very early. And you see, the lump is very small, but it has involved the skin and the bone also. There is dimpling. And this is also the stage 4. And the ladies say to me, yes, I didn't notice. So it is very important to see inframammary fold also. Also, the lady was not having a bulky breast. And in spite of that, she missed the finding. Next slide. The important aspect is passage disease of the breast. This is another clinical situation in which the patient presents with some irritation over the nipple area. There is itchy feeling over the nipple area, and the ulcer develops. And what happens after ulceration? It doesn't heal. On left side, you can see the early findings, and over right side, you can see there are multiple satellite nodules. And you know, the lady presented with, doctor, I have some skin lesions over the breast. You know, you see, these are satellite disease. This is also stage 4 disease. Next slide. Sometimes patient present with bloody discharge, unilateral single duct spontaneous discharge. It should raise suspicion in your mind. Why it is so? This can be interductal papilloma, and this can be interductal carcinoma also. Next slide. And another finding is nipple retraction. Patient may not have clear-cut breast lump. This lady presented with, yes, something has happened. My nipple is going inwards, and you see, she has applied some ointment over the nipple, and there is discoloration because of appliement of that some paste over the nipple. And you see over the mammography, the huge lump that has covered the whole breast and with so much microcalcification. Next slide. And we talk about always, yes, breast cancer in females. It is not unusual to find male breast cancer. I usually see 1 male breast cancer in a month. So 1 in 100 is the ratio that we get in our clinics. Next. So male breast cancer is not rare. And another important scenario is what about pregnancy-associated breast cancer? Although it is very rare, but if you see the young ladies of 20 to 39 years, you see 20% of them having breast cancer that was associated with pregnancy, and it is there is very high chance to miss this cancer because of changes in the breast. And if you have any suspicion, patient should undergo ultrasound or MRI of the breast to diagnose that lump. Next. So I have discussed what are the clinical features that we usually see, and we can miss the findings I have discussed. Now I am coming over case to case, and this was a lady she was having a lump over right breast for last 9 months, and you know, if you see contour, then left breast is slightly higher up, but not the right breast. And that ultrasound right breast reported over-lobulated, well-defined solid hypoechoic lesion, the right breast of neoplastic pathology. I'm going, you know, they have done only ultrasound right breast. This was not correct. Not correct. It should create suspicion in our mind, because neoplasm means it can be benign, it can be malignant. And they have written lastly, please correlate clinically. So it means, and what happened after when FAC was done, it was fibroadenoma. You know, at the age of 60 years, it is unlikely, I should say, what should I say, I don't know, to patient having fibroadenoma. So we have completely missed the case. And when I did a PET CT for this patient was having a huge lump of 6 centimeters with axillary lymph node. Next case, Mitali. This is a case of young lady, and she said, yes, doctor, I am having ill-defined thickening in the lump. And doctors advised mammography, and that mammography, you see, because of dense tissue, mammography is not able to see any proper picture of any disease. So they reported BRADS 0. And what happened after that? Lady sat at home because she understood. She was an educated lady, and she was working in an MNC company, and she thought it is BRADS 0. That means it is nothing. So sometimes what happens? Patient come to me. So I told them, don't do mammography by yourself. What happens? There are so many clubs now, they are advising to mammography. After doing mammography, you should consult to your physician what has been reported. It is very important. And when patient came with a T4B disease, and you know, with advanced disease, with metastasis in such a young lady, then we don't have words. What should be done? Next case. This is another lady, and she was having a lump over right breast, and her mammography reported complex cyst with solid component over left breast, BRADS 3. And as I have shown earlier, BRADS 3 means most probably benign, but they have reported complex cyst with cystic component. That means you should do further biopsy. So this is the clear indication of biopsy. Next slide. This lady, if Dr. Neelu Khaneja is here, Dr. Neelu Khaneja referred to me. She had complaint of itching and discharge for last 6 months. She consulted to gynecologist after 6 months, then consulted dermatologist. Next slide. She was diagnosed to have Pazzi disease of the breast. Why? Because she was having unilateral disease. These are the clinical features of a typical Pazzi disease. When you are doing topical treatment, when you are applying ointment, the ulcer is not going to heal. And in biopsy, they are typical Pazzi cells. Next slide. The lady was having underlying interrectal carcinoma also.
Hello.
Lady presents. Hello.
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 Hello? Am I visible?
Yeah, you are visible.
Yeah, so next slide, in case 5, I am going to present a lady. This is the lady presented with a history of recurrent breast lump. And because of recurrent breast lump, when malignancy happened, then she clearly missed that. And the FNAC was negative. And when we did PET CT, the stage was stage 3 because of the huge lesion and multiple lymph nodes. So if the patient is having recurrent breast, next slide, recurrent history of breast lump, we cannot miss the diagnosis. Next. Another lady that presented with the carcinoma of cervix. And we did a metastatic workup. This lady presented to Dr. Swasti. She was having carcinoma cervix, and because of being in onco, she advised bilateral mammography. And when bilateral mammography was done, there was breast malignancy also. These mammography diagnosed the breast cancer 1 year before, usually 1 year before the symptoms appear. So she was diagnosed at the right time. Next slide. This is the case of inflammatory disease of breast. And you know, when you see at one point, you see it seems to be breast abscess. But when you examine, there is hard lump. There is fluctuating mass also, but there is hard lump. Because of hard lump, this should generate a clear suspicion in your mind. What can be this? And when biopsy was done, it came out to be inflammatory disease of breast. Next. So I have discussed all the scenario that I thought I should discuss with you. Breast cancer is of many types. Next slide. And it is not yes, it is a ductal carcinoma, lobular carcinoma. When we do molecular subtypes, it is of about 4 types. And we have to plan our treatment according to that type. Next slide. If we diagnose the breast early, why I am discussing with you? Because you are the first person to contact any disease, any breast-related disease. And if we diagnose the patient early, patient may undergo breast conservation. Next slide. And being lady, you can understand how important is the breast for us. And if we diagnose, we do some sentinel lymph node biopsy, and because of this sentinel lymph node, if the nodes are negative, we can avoid axillary lymph node dissection. Next slide. And if we avoid axillary lymph node dissection, next slide, then it can avoid lymphedema also. Next slide. So because in breast cancer, it is not necessary to take wide margins. If we take 1 millimeter margin, that is also enough. In Fallot's tumor, although it is very important to take 1 centimeter margin, but not for IDC, ductal carcinoma. And literature has proven if we do breast conservation surgery with radiotherapy, or we do modified radical mastectomy, the results are equal. Survival is equal after 20 years also. Next slide. So the last slide I am presenting to you is lesser is better. Next slide. Diagnosis at the right point is very important. These are happy moments that we did, that we spent our patients. I, Dr. Swasti, we used to do. I think we will do near future this support program in which we and our patients celebrate our survivorship programs. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. The experience that I have in the US or in any other countries that we lag behind is their diagnosis at an early stage. When we diagnose at correct time, we can give our patients a better quality of life. You know, patients celebrate with you when they are not having any side effects. So if we diagnose at an early stage, it is very good for us and our patients also. So to conclude with, every breast lump should be examined properly. The key is early detection. And clinical examination, history taking, it is very important. And we should add mammography and tissue diagnosis as per our requirement, because by triple assessment, we can diagnose up to 95% cases. And if we do right treatment at right time, we can give a best quality of life. Being a gynae surgeon, you can understand the quality of life is very important nowadays. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind intention. Now,
excellent. Excellent presentation, Dr. Ashi. Now you have got some questions in your chat box. See?
Yeah.
Can you see the questions?
The
Please
question
answer
is, what dose of Primrose to be given in mastalgia? Usually we advise 1000 mg TDS, but I don't know how much patients get relief, but sometimes it is very important to give this drug, so we give it. And about of Oliplex, you can give, but we have to, when you give this Oliplex, you have to remember these side effects. And what I understand, you can give this only for 3 months. You cannot give for a long time. Okay. And Dr. Vanna has asked for the treatment of inflammatory breast disease. Inflammatory breast disease means inflammatory breast cancer. If it is an inflammatory breast cancer, it stays as T4B. We have to treat according to T4B stays. Firstly, usually given chemotherapy, and after that, surgery and radiation therapy works. And Dr. Vinita thanked me. Dr. Alpna, thank you so much. Actually, now I was much confused because you all are so learned person, gynecologist. What should I tell? What should I not tell? I know you all know about breast examination, but Madam has told me to explain about examination, breast self-examination, so I covered it much more. Maybe I think I don't know it has become lengthy for you or not. Dr. Seema, any other question?
Yeah, there are some questions also. What do you say about use of endoxifen in fibroadenomas?
Actually, ma'am, there is no clear-cut guideline, but I know people use it, and the patient get a good response to it. What I say, you can use it, but it is a hormone that SERM, selective estrogen receptor modulator. You should use it judiciously. You can use it, but you should use it for a short period, not for a long period. And if you can avoid it by reassurance, then it is better.
Okay. What are the risk factors of developing breast cancer at the age of 20 to 30 years and at any other age? You can divide into, right?
Yeah, I understand. Ma'am, this is I should say it is an excellent question. In 20s and 30s, the risk factors are usually related to family, genetics. The patient may have some BRCA2, BRCA1 if the family history of breast cancer is there, and if patient she has got tested for BRCA1 and BRCA2. In BRCA1, there is 65% chances of patient having breast cancer, and if BRCA2 positive, there are chances of 45% patients having breast cancer, as happened in case of Angelina Jolie also. So mostly in young age, the risk factors are related to genetics and family history. And other risk
previous disease of the breast, previous disease of breast.
Previous disease of breast means if the lady is having risk of breast cancer,
right,
then can also have. But if the previous disease of breast is not significantly related, previous disease of breast means what? Patient may have
any previous biopsy. No, Dr. Ashi, any previous biopsy has been taken for one or other cause?
Yeah, but actually, in literature it is written as you are saying. But you know, what does it mean by previous biopsy? Previous biopsy will be taken for either in situ disease or if there is any hyperplasia. Okay, if the biopsy is done for any these two causes, then patient should have in their mind, yes, she may have in future any cancer. And for other patients, there are two types of risk factors it can be modifiable or non-modifiable.
Right.
And in modifiable, we say if the lady is taking not doing any exercise, there is excess of estrogen that may be related to early menarche, or on hormones, on oral contraceptive or hormonal replacement therapy. And one important is alcohol. If the lady is taking alcohol, what happens when somebody is taking alcohol? Then estrogen doesn't metabolize and it accumulates. The reason of breast cancer is estrogen, excess of estrogen. So if it accumulates, it can cause cancer. So that's why if those patients who are taking more alcohol, they can have breast cancer. And
can we give the name of obesity for the risk factor of
yes,
breast
I
cancer?
was just mentioning that obesity is also why obesity, because in postmenopausal ladies, fat is converted into estrogen. So that's why. That's why.
Perfect.
Yes, this is the reason of being being obese. It causes breast cancer. And there are some other causes that we cannot modify. It is related to our family history. It is related to our genes. BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations are there. As you are saying, you are very correct that if the having of previous breast biopsy, lobular hyperplasia, these are the risk factors. Because of that, we can have these cancers.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rashi, for excellent and wonderful informative session. And now I give mic to Dr. Alpna Kansal. She is sharing some answers and questions of quiz session.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, speakers, chairpersons, for being with us this afternoon. And it is our hard luck we can't bring you tea after the sessions. Hope everyone is awake till now. So, the talks were very comprehensive and complete with great clarity. And now we come to the quiz. And we have learned today that wise women don't give answers, but they ask good questions. But this is true for our speakers, Dr. Swasti and Dr. Rashi as well. Our wise women, they give good questions, but they do answer good questions also. So beginning with the quiz questions for July. The first question was dose of radiation by exposure to 1 mammogram is equivalent to. The answer was 0.7 MSV. So initially we had an option, none of the above, but I took permission from Dr. Rashi because a dose that was available on Google was somewhere from 0.4 to 1 MSV. So we took none of the above also as correct answer. The second question was, which is not true about MR mammography, that it is done only for ladies more than 40 years. Now, third question is, in which imaging modality microcalcifications are not visible, that is MR mammography. Which is not true for FNAC, we have learned it very clearly today, that it cannot do ER-PR study. We can't do ER-PR study on FNAC. What is the full form of RMI and ROMA? It is risk of malignancy index and risk of malignancy algorithm. Which tumor markers are analyzed for ROMA? These are serum CA-125 and CA-HE4. Which modality is used in younger women with adnexal mass after ultrasound? That is MRI. Which tracer is used in PET-CT? This is FTG, fluorodeoxyglucose. Initially, the question was which contrast is used in PET-CT, and we have given the marks to those who have written iodinated contrast as well. Which tumor marker must be done in bilateral adnexal masses other than serum CA-125? That is serum CEA to assess the possibility of GI primary. Now, the two questions, which is the false statement, Mr. Andy Tiwari was never a DM of Ghaziabad, and about Suchita Triplani, all the options are correct. So the answer is none of the above. Now, the much awaited quiz results will be announced by Dr. Neeta Agarwal. And I want to tell everyone that we will be giving prizes to the first 5 correct answer. Every time we will select new attempts. I mean, if you attempt the correct, you are selected in first 5. We will qualify you for bumper prize, but we will give you the new entries as prizes, quiz prizes. So over to Dr. Neeta. Dr. Neeta, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alpna. So good afternoon, everyone. So this is the time to announce the name of the quiz winners. So here you are, Dr. Seema Varshney, Dr. Vinita Divakar ma'am, Dr. Meenakshi Sharma, Dr. Kavita Sharma, Dr. Ritu Gupta. And now, hold your breath. I am going to announce and disclose the name of the bumper prize qualifier in this July month. So here you are, Dr. Pardigar, Dr. Paridigar, Dr. Nupur Sharma, Dr. Nalini Jain. And I also have a list of all bumper prize qualifiers till now. That is Dr. Manisha Agrawal, Dr. Poonam Gupta, Dr. Shweta Singh, Dr. Vanna Dayal Mittal, Dr. Seema Chawla, Dr. Kumu Srivastav, Dr. Nupur Jain. अब एक बात है, एक बार जोरदार तालियां तो इन सबके लिए बजती हैं. Please unmute yourself and give a big round of applause for everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now I thank our eminent speakers, Dr. Swasti and Dr. Rashi, for sparing and sharing their valuable time and knowledge with us. I also thank our chairpersons, Dr. Madhu Singhal and Dr. Seema Varshney. My special thanks to our Gaussians and our audience who made this webinar successful. I thank to the pharmaceutical company Torrent persons to arrange this webinar. And in the last, I also thank my team, Dr. Alpna, Dr. Anjana, and Dr. Monica, and everyone for successful webinars meeting in this difficult COVID time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Neeta. We can have a fellowship time. Everyone can open their cameras, please.
And we can have a light chat about our dresses and all. Hello,
and a high tea party also.
I know, virtual tea party.
चाय मैम
सुनो, virtual चाय सारे जने अपने अपना एक कप दिखाओ यहाँ पे.
अंजना मैम, अल्पना मैम अपने हाई टी नहीं कराई, देखो मैं सबके लिए लेके आई हूँ.
अरे वाह, very nice. Thank you so much.
This is for everyone. We'll share it for everyone.
At our home, we can have a tea. No problem.
Yeah. I have asked for a cup of tea, तो सबके लिए ही है.
Yeah. A cup of tea on my side. Thank you so much for everyone.
कहाँ से हो? कहाँ पे हो?
गोवा में है ये, गोवा से वापस नहीं आ पा रही है. गोवा से वापस नहीं आ रही है, वहीं पे है ये.
मैं लॉकडाउन में अटक गया.
हेलो रीनू, कैसे हो? हेलो स्मिता मैम, आप कैसे हो?
हेलो,
बड़े दिनों बाद दिख रहे हो. हेलो विनीता मैम, कैसे हो?
सरला मैम की रोटी बन गई नहीं बन गई?
विनीता मैम अपने आप को करो, अनम्यूट करो.
हेलो अंजना.
डॉक्टर विनीता, अनम्यूट योरसेल्फ. हेलो.
Very nice, Anjana. Hello, Dr. Lalita. How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Vinita.
Hi, Dr. Shashi Avdesh. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Anita.
ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे कुंभ के मेले में मिले हैं हम सारे. हाय हाय इस तरह कर रहे हैं.
बस गले नहीं मिल सकते.
Exactly.
देखो ऐसा मैं तो गले मिल सकते हैं.
जैसे मैं देख के ऐसे लगता है कि पता नहीं कब के बिछड़े हुए हैं.
बिल्कुल यही लग रहा है.
तो भेंट हो जाएंगे मिलने से पहले.
ये एंटिसिपेट करो कि कब मिलेंगे और क्या होगा. व्हाट विल बी द रिएक्शन. कैसे कैसे गले मिलेंगे.
अरे तू तो बहुत
सोच के ही अच्छा लग रहा है. अरे तू तो बहुत मोटी हो गई. अरे तू तो बहुत
अब विनीता तुम तो पतली भी नहीं हुई, फोटो में लग रही थी.
और ऐसे ही कॉम्प्लीमेंट्स पे कॉम्प्लीमेंट्स आते जा रहे थे, है ना.
बिल्कुल बेबकवास, बिल्कुल किसी ने देखा ही नहीं मुझे।
देखा, सबने देखा, एंगल
नहीं
भी देखा,
मैम मैंने देखा,
एंगल
आप
भी
पतले
देखा,
डेफिनेटली हो गए
हो गए हैं।
नहीं हुई हूँ,
हुए हो, मैंने सर्वोदय में देखा था, मैंने आपको सर्वोदय में देखा था।
सबको देखना है कितना पतला कौन हुआ है।
अंजना रियल में देखा था मैडम को, रियल में?
हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल कह रही हूँ, मैंने देखा था मैम पतली हो गई हैं।
अच्छा थैंक यू, अगली बार मिठाई खिलाऊंगी।
अगली बार, वो अगली बार कब आएगा, कब आएगा अगली बार?
वही तो, आ जाओ किसी दिन, दो करके आते हैं।
नहीं आएंगे भी तो आप हमें दूर बिठाओगे तो हम नहीं आते।
नहीं मैं नहीं बिठा रही, मामा पे शील लगा लूंगी।
एंटीबॉडी टेस्ट करा लो अब सब अपना अपना, जिसका
उसके बाद
पॉजिटिव होंगे वो मिल सकते हैं।
हाँ ये बात सही है, सारे जने हम अपनी एंटीबॉडी चेक करा लेते हैं।
अल्पना एक सर्कुलर निकाल दो, those invitees will be IgG positive।
नहीं मिल सकते,
सही आइडिया है,
चलो बाय,
चलो जी, थैंक यू ऑल, थैंक यू अंजना एंड Alpana for giving this opportunity।
सीमा, thank you Madhu ma'am, thank you everyone, really enjoyed having you here, thank you
IT का मेन्यू
Neelu ma'am, thank you so much।
आज का मेन्यू है,
IT का मेन्यू बताओ जल्दी से।
ओके जी बाय।
ओके जी बाय। सुन अभी तो एक कप ही मिल जाए चाय का शेयर करने के लिए।
कप भेज देती हूँ मैं।
चलो कप भेज रहे हैं आपको।
अच्छा ठीक है। चलो ओके जी बाय, थैंक यू सो मच, बाय।
हाँ भाई अंजना
बोलो जी, कैसा रहा?
बढ़िया, बहुत
अच्छा रहा,
बहुत बढ़िया। टॉक्स दोनों बहुत अच्छी थी, वेरी मतलब क्लियर इन देयर कॉन्सेप्ट्स, वो वाली बात थी,
बिल्कुल
उन्होंने बहुत बढ़िया दिया। थैंक यू जी सबका।
चलिए, थैंक यू टोरेंट पीपल फॉर गिविंग अस दिस प्लेटफॉर्म।
थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू मिताली जी, आपने काफी मेहनत की।
हाँ मिताली तो बेचारी, उसको तो हमने बहुत परेशान किया।
थैंक यू
अल्पना, थैंक यू अल्पना, थैंक यू अंजना,
थैंक यू मैम,
थैंक यू स्मिता जी फॉर बीइंग देयर।
मुझे लगता है मेरी बैकग्राउंड इस बार अच्छी आ गई।
म्यूट है, माइक अपना अनम्यूट कर लीजिए। विश्वा मैम अपना अनम्यूट कर लीजिए, आपको सुनना है हमें, अनम्यूट करिए।
मैंने विश्वा मैम को बहुत बार विश किया, पर मैम प्रोबब्ली या तो सुन नहीं पाई या क्या बात
सुन पा रहे हैं, बट शी इज नॉट एबल टू अनम्यूट हरसेल्फ, शी इज एबल टू लिसन। विश्वा मैम अनम्यूट कर लीजिए, शी इज वेविंग हर हैंड्स, मतलब शी वाज थ्रू आउट द टॉक, दैट मींस शी वाज लिसनिंग, दैट्स व्हाई शी वाज देयर।
नाउ यू कैन लिसन टू मी।
यस मैम, यस वी कैन।
आखिरकार पॉसिबल हो गया।
हो गई मैं मोटी हो गई हूँ।
मैम आपके लिए 1 कप ऑफ टी, स्पेशल कप ऑफ टी।
ओके, थैंक यू सो मच।
तुम्हारा कप
मेरी तरफ से पियो ना।
अंजी क्या कह रहे हो?
है इसमें कुछ है नहीं,
हमारी तरफ से पियो।
पत्तों के बीच में।
अच्छा नहीं दिख रहा, बिकॉज ये भी ग्रीन है ना, इसलिए नहीं दिख रहा। मैं बैकग्राउंड ही चेंज कर।
कप में कुछ है नहीं लग रहा है
मैम।
मैं कप नहीं लाई, खाली
पूरा भरा हुआ।
अभी मेरे पति बनाएंगे चाय तो पियेंगे हम।
वेरी गुड मैम।
दिस इज द कप फॉर यू।
सेशन अटेंड कर रही हैं, आज नहीं बनाएंगे मैम।
मैं सेशन अटेंड करी, ही विल मेक टी फॉर मी।
दैट्स गुड।
नहीं, इवनिंग टीम उनका सेशन है, इवनिंग टीम का सेशन है, मॉर्निंग टीम का सेशन है।
बढ़िया बढ़िया।
कैसे हैं नीलू मैम, हाउ आर यू?
हेलो
मैम बहुत टायर्ड थी, डॉक्टर नीलू तो बहुत टायर्ड थी थ्रू आउट द सेशन।
she takes a nap, that is her quality. She will take a small nap in between
cat nap. This is what is her quality, cat nap.
Yeah.
अल्पना तुम गोवा में कैसे फंस गई?
मैम बस लॉकडाउन में अटक गई, आ ही नहीं पाई मैम।
लॉकडाउन से थोड़ी हो वहाँ पे।
सुन अब तो बाय एयर आना जाना खुल गया, वापस आ जा।
नहीं यार, क्वारंटाइन के बाद ही तो नहीं आ रही।
खुलने के बाद ही तो गई हो।
नहीं सुन, वो क्या वो कहते हैं, वो गो एयर एंड इंडिगो, वो तो वहां पे वो भी देते हैं, फेस शील्ड्स भी देते हैं, तो तू वो सब लगा के आ जा।
तो मैं फेस शील्ड लेने के लिए जाऊंगा।
चलो जी,
चलो जी, बाय बाय बाय
bye. Thank you Torrent people once again, and thank you everyone. Bye.
हाय सरला, हाय सरला,
हाय विश्वा,
कैसी हो
यार तुम बताओ।
हेलो डॉक्टर विश्वा।
अली जी आप कैसे हैं बताइए?
हम ठीक हैं।
और बेटियां चली गई, कॉलेज चली गई?
नहीं, उसकी तो वर्चुअल क्लासेस होंगी।
अच्छा,
ऑनलाइन क्लासेस होंगी।
घर पर
IIT बॉम्बे। हाँ,
So ये तो और फायदा हो गया मैम, आपके पास भी रहेगी and she can enjoy the both the worlds.
I will also enjoy her company.
Exactly.
That's true.
यार तुमने आज हरा थीम रखा हुआ है अंजना?
हाँ जी,
हरा थीम रखा हुआ है?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, मैंने हरा थीम रखा हुआ है।
हरियाली मेरे क्या
पर्दा कहाँ गया अंजना?
हाँ जी,
पीछे से पर्दा कहाँ गया? हरा
वो चला
अभी दोबारा लगा देती हूँ हरा।
हाँ, देखा नहीं।
मेरा चाय का कप सबको दिख नहीं रहा था, मैं सबके लिए चाय लाई थी, इसलिए मैंने पर्दा वो हटा दिया। लो मैं हरा लगा देती हूँ।
अब दिखाओ कब वाकई उसमें रंग ही चुप गया था। अब
ये देखो ना मैम, अब कप को देखना बड़ा मुश्किल है, वो भी हरा है।
दिख रहा है, दिख रहा है।
दिख तो रहा है
मैम, वो अलादीन के चेहरे की तरह से वो दिख नहीं रहा।
हेलो सरला मैम।
हेलो जी,
क्या हाल है?
ठीक है जी,
अरसे बाद।
हाँ थैंक यू मिताली, पर तुम्हें थोड़ा वेट करना पड़ेगा, हम लोग सारे अनवाइंड कर रहे हैं इस प्लेटफॉर्म पे।
कोई बात नहीं, उसे भी जाने दो चक कॉफी पीने के लिए।
यार तो कोविड की थोड़ी सी तो वो निकले ना, सारा का सारा मतलब सारे दिन भर कोविड।
टेंशन
या
इतनी आदत हो गई है ना सबको देखने की, अब बिन देखे रहा नहीं जाता और देख
नहीं जाता,
हुआ नहीं जाता।
बिल्कुल, दैट्स ट्रू मैम।
ये बात, चलो
ओके, बाय बाय
मैम, बाय, नमस्ते।
Monica, I think she has left early. I think so. So, okay, we leave now. Mitali, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Abhijit. And Mr. Abhijit, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitra.
You are mute.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Okay. You have taken screenshots, Mitali?
I have taken. I'll be sharing
Share
with
in the group. Okay, thank you.
The recording
And
also will
recording
share
too.
with you. The recording
Yeah?
also will share with you link by tomorrow.
Yeah. We will upload it on YouTube.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.